Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den. With me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Please don't mind my eye today. It's just a little bit of irritation after getting through a couple of pretty intensive weeks at work, and I got some kind of crap in my eye. But that's neither here nor there. Today we are continuing on with our Witch's Guide at part 6. We are at 5th level spells now, and gotta tell you, the hits just kind of keep on coming with this because there's a lot of great things to choose from here. Once again, I had to condense down my list a little bit, and that's going to be the case here from here on out. That'll be the case for most of these spellcasting classes when I get to them. But let's roll right on into this, shall we? So, for the witch, after you get to your 5th level spells, one of the best ones for you to possibly pick up, and it's good for any spellcaster that can get a hold of this, is Feeble Mind. Now, Feeble Mind is another I win spell, especially when you're going up against other spellcasters, other arcane spellcasters. Range of 100 feet plus 10 feet per level with a will save to negate. On failure, the target's intelligence and charisma scores drop to 1. Sorcerers and wizards will take -4 penalties on this save. This is absolutely, unequivocally, inarguably a must-have for your spell list. You need to have this in your repertoire. This absolutely wrecks other spellcasters, and those other arcane spellcasters are going to be some of the biggest pains in the ass for you and your party. So, having this one ready to go in your arsenal, absolutely great to have. Now then, before we move on, I should explain, for any of you new here that don't understand why this is so important, having their intelligence and charisma scores drop to 1 effectively makes them a vegetable. They're still alive, but the best they can do is just kind of sit there and drool. And spell casting for all of these characters is dependent on their primary stat that all their spell casting works from be up as high as possible. So in order to even be able to cast higher level spells, you have to have a high enough intelligence score to do so. Dropping their intelligence score well below 10 like this removes their ability to cast any spells, and probably even just removes their ability to function at all on the battlefield beyond just maybe slapping away at whatever might be hurting them. But that's about the gist of it, and I hope that impresses upon you the importance of this spell and how useful this is for you. And then we have Hold Monster. Now, I really like this one. Some guides rate this as a little bit lower, but this is a good one to have. This is by no means a terrible choice. It's a good choice. Now, it works exactly like Hold Person, but you affect any living creature that will fail its will save. You can only affect one target at a time, but you're going to be able to affect corrupted treants or wyverns or any number of other flesh and blood creatures. And this actually works really well on flying creatures, because if you hit them with this while they're mid-flight and they fail their will saves, they're going to take that fall damage. And while, yeah, you do still have to be in range, even if you're just within, say, 50 feet, that's several d6 of fall damage that you get to inflict on them right there, and they're still going to be held in place. So even if they're alive, you're going to be able to just absolutely wreck them. And then after that, in the same vein as Hold Person, or Hold Monster rather, it's Dominate Person. Now, this one is limited. You're only able to affect humanoid creatures, but the big draw for this is it lasts 1 day per caster level. So you're going to be dominating people for, well, you're going to be controlling them for days upon days at this point. And the thing is that it gets better if you share a common language with the character, with the target of this spell, because otherwise you're limited to more, well, simple commands like come here, attack this, protect me, go there. So having a language in common with the target is going to make it much more effective. But the fact that it lasts for so long is great. And the fact that you can give them more complex commands is great, because it makes it harder for people to notice that the person's acting out of character, that they're not behaving like they normally would. It's not perfect. They still have to follow your commands, but your commands can be a bit more abstract and have it function properly by telling them, be yourself, behave as you would until this moment. Once moment X hits, you go to plan A, stab the crap out of that person while their back is turned, and then just try to fight your way free or make a big scene, whatever. Point being, this holds a lot of potential for subterfuge, and you know what? It lasts so long that, say your party gets ambushed, you take hold of one of the ambushers, you use the spell on them, you can get so much information out of them and then send them back to wherever it is they came from, leaving little trails for you to follow them back. And because it lasts several days and you don't have to keep focusing on it, this is a great way for you to have little nice neat trails back to any secret lairs, hidden bases, or any of that stuff. You can also have a general sense of where the target is at. Now, you do have to focus more for that to work, but the fact remains that this effect is going to last for several days, and you can locate where the subject of the spell is at. Now, we come up to another one, and this is still, again, one of my favorite spell casting options, and that's Summon Monster 5. Now, with this one, we get some nice upgrades in the types of creatures we have available. We get Dire Lions, Brelani Azada, Chitons. There's plenty of things to like here, especially if you're going with some of the extra options that get listed in some other books. As with previous iterations, you can summon 1d3 from the level 4 spell list, or 1d4 plus 1 from any of the other lower tier lists. So, again, this is why I like the summon monster spells, even though some guides will list them as greens or possibly yellows earlier on. The fact that as you get higher and higher in level with the types of summon monster spells that you can bring out, you can start summoning more of the lesser monsters. Well, I say lesser, but once you start being able to summon multiple numbers of creatures with spells or spell-like abilities, this gets even more useful, because you're essentially throwing down almost twice, 3 times, or 4 times as many spells in a given round on your turn without having to spend a whole lot of extra actions. You're creating so many more actions on your turn, and so many spells have such great added effects that it really starts to tip the whole action economy thing in your team's favor. But that's assuming everything's going according to plan and you have this spell. After that, we come up to Rune of Ruin. Now, this is another one that I really like, though I've never really gotten to use it myself. Range of 100 feet plus 10 feet per level, like so many others for the Witch. You only get to target one object, fortitude saves negate. You reduce magic items to 1/4 of their total hit points, and you give it the broken condition. If the item provides any kind of a number bonus to attack, damage, armor class, saves, anything like that, you reduce that by 1 for every 3 caster levels that you have. Other magic abilities are going to be reduced to functioning only about 50% of the time. So if they have the flaming quality, there's a 50% chance that'll fail. Keen, haste, holy, those properties may fail up to half the time in combat. Now, just even having that is amazing, because there are so many higher end NPCs you may be coming up against through the stories that are going to have really good quality items on hand. And if it's a spellcaster with a staff of some sort, fortitude saves do not really tend to be all that high for spellcasters, and that's what's going to be used in the case of these items, is they're going to be using their spellcasters' fortitude save with possibly some of their own magical bonuses thrown on top of it. But even then, that's still going to be relatively low numbers compared to their will saves. So, ruining somebody else's magic equipment makes the fight easier. And the fact that it's getting reduced down to 1/4 the total hit points makes it a lot easier for your fighters, your barbarians, paladins, and rangers. Whoever has high physical combat abilities will have a much easier time sundering those items or breaking them. A broken magic item will cease to function, and using this to make it easier to break them makes that option all that much more attractive. But going on from there, we have Baleful Polymorph, another one that's pretty short range at 25 feet plus 5 feet per level for range. You target one creature, fortitude saves negate, will saves for partial effects, and you will turn your target into a small or smaller one-hit die creature. The will save part of that there is to see if the target will still have access to any of their abilities, abilities like spell casting or spell-like abilities. The other thing to note is this is permanent. So if they fail their fortitude save but succeed on their will save, they're going to be stuck as a frog. They might be a spell-casting frog, but they're still a frog permanently. And oh, I should also mention, if you turn them into something like a frog, they may still technically have access to their spell-casting ability, but they need their spell components. They need to be able to make the proper arcane gestures in order to activate their spells. So you're really limiting a lot of their effectiveness unless it's they have innate spell-like abilities. Like say you hit a beholder with this. A beholder will technically still have access to a lot of its spell-like abilities. Like you may turn it into a frog, but it will probably still levitate a little bit naturally if it has a will save. Or at least that's how I would interpret it. But if any of these targets fails their will save, they're stuck as whatever small or tiny animal you've turned them into, with no abilities beyond what they might have as, well, a frog. They might be able to jump real good, but they're stuck that way permanently with a very limited amount of hit points, and they're stuck out in the wilds or in whatever dangerous dungeon you've thrown them in. It's permanent until it's removed, and, well, who's really going to be paying attention to the stupid frog? And also, that stupid little frog is much easier for you to kill than the big bad whatever it was beforehand. So, another great one to have in your spell lists. And then we come down to Mind Fog. This one's pretty good. It's almost great, but it's good. It's in between there. 100-foot range, and you conjure up a 20-foot high, 20-foot radius fog, and it lasts for 30 minutes plus 2d6 rounds after your targets exit the area. Will saves to negate it, and the effect, if they fail, is a -10 to wisdom and will saves. Absolutely dangerous for any target. It's dangerous for spellcasters, whether they're clerics, wizards, witches, sorcerers, whatever. This is really bad for them. This is also really bad for anybody else, too, because, well, fighters and barbarians, they don't exactly have great will saves to begin with, and inflicting them with a -10 is going to reduce them to, well, you can't actually reduce them down into the negatives, but only being able to have... Actually, you might be able to reduce them down into the negatives. I need to relook up the ruling on that one. But at the very least, you're dropping their bonuses to a 0, meaning it's pure die rolls whether or not they're going to be failing on other effects that you hit them with it, which greatly improves your odds. And if this does drop them down into negatives, inflicting them with, say, a -3, they're subtracting 3 from whatever they roll on the d20. So this just gets even better and better. And the fact that it's a fog that lasts for half an hour, that's incredible. Really, really, really a good one to have. Another one that's right there in that fog cloud kind of category is Cloud Kill. This is one of the best area of effect spells that you can get to for dealing damage, because, well, noxious clouds are going to spread from you, and they're going to spread over an area, and it's a dense cloud, so it's going to sink down naturally as these noxious vapors waft and emanate from you. Anything with 3 hit dice or less, or to put it another way, a third level creature or lower, gets instant death. Just instant death right off the bat. 4 to 6 level creatures, or 4 to 6 hit dice creatures, get to make a fortitude save, or they die. 6 or more, they start taking constitution damage. So, anything that's 4th to 6th level that's stuck in this has to make a fortitude save every round they're stuck in it, or die. Anything with 6 hit dice or 6 levels or more that's stuck in this starts taking constitution damage every time they fail their fortitude saves. Now, that's constitution damage, not hit point damage. That means the basic stat for the basis of their health is taking hits. So it's every round that they're in it that they keep failing, their odds of succeeding keep dropping for every time they fail. So eventually, once that constitution score hits 0, they're dead. Doesn't matter. You're not dealing damage to their hit points per se. You're taking away their actual physical vitality, whatever it is that you want to describe it as, that sustains their life, that keeps their heart pumping, the blood flowing, the muscles oxygenated, the lungs filling with air. That just goes away as you eat that away with this spell. Now, if there's a cave entrance and it goes down, just stand at the entrance to it, cast Cloud Kill, just stand right there, have somebody with fans or have somebody create a gust of wind spell to just funnel this cloud right down into there and just mess up whatever's in your way as you maintain this spell for as long as you possibly can. And now, going off after that, we have Major Creation. This is another one that I considered making a blue, but it's... how good it is depends on the situation and how creative you can get. That said, it's still a good spell to have. It's a very limited range, 25-foot range and all of that, and it works like the Minor Creation spell, but you can work with more materials like stone and metal. Materials like vegetable matter, so wood, vines, stuff like that, are going to last 2 hours per level, while stone and base metals like iron are going to last 1 hour per level. So you need a bridge to get across. You need to make sure it's going to last you a while, a very long while. You make it out of wood and ropey vines that just string their way across the river or the gaping chasm or whatever it is that's in your way. You need an effective barrier to help camp out for the night and make sure you have some extra cover. Just conjure up a couple of stone walls. You can even give it crenellations, matriculations, all of that fancy wall defense stuff in order to make sure that you and your party can stay safe. Or you can even just make a nice round stone dome in the shape of something like an igloo with a little hole up top, so that way the campfire can go out but nobody can really see the campfire because, well, it's in a covered dome. This spell has a lot of really great uses. It's good mid-combat, it's good out of combat. It just really depends on how creative you can get and how cleverly you can apply this spell. Really, really useful. And then after this, we start coming into a couple of spells that are more flavorful or really, really well celebrated. Now, Contagion Greater is one that I really like. It just fits with the witch so well, and while I do love great combat and intense combat, there's more ways to affect the game than just straight up combat. And that's where I really like this one a lot more than... I rate it higher than just purely off of its mechanical effectiveness for immediate combat uses. You select a disease to afflict the target with. You have to be able to touch your target physically, but with this touch, you inflict the disease upon them, and it can spread out to other people, and the disease cannot be beaten by fortitude saves, meaning the target's body will be physically unable to beat this disease. It can only be beaten and removed by magic, and the difficulty for that DC, that difficulty, goes up by +5, significantly increasing the chances that the disease is going to stick around. This is going to do incredible amounts of damage to cities, the countryside, to armies. So if you're playing in a like a grand campaign game, like grand campaign in the sense that there's a huge war on, your character's part of a military, or even just part of a group that's watching all these militaries fight, these huge armies going at each other. Drop this spell on them and just watch the armies crumble, either the enemy army or your own. Be careful though, because if you do use this on the enemy army and they get wise to the fact that this is a disease, or if they're ruthless, or if they're just desperate enough, they'll try to use their diseased soldiers against your own army. But that said, this is still incredibly useful in that situation. Less so in direct team-based combat, or when you're directly in the fight front lines. You're going to want something that deals damage a lot faster and doesn't kill people over the course of weeks. You want them dead faster. So mechanically, this does not work well for that kind of straight-up, fast-paced combat. But for long-term goals, long-term destruction, this spell will be hard to beat. Great to have, and it just fits with the motif that the witch has, with that styling, that characterization, and personality. And then we come up to the last one here on the list, which is Magic Jar. This spell gets rated really high by a lot of people, and a lot of people are like, oh, you can clear out entire dungeons with this spell. This spell is incredible. I don't like it all that much. I don't think it's that good of a spell. What it does is you put your soul in a jar, in this case a magic gem. It does not actually have to be a jar, but if somebody ever actually made a jar for the magic jar spell, I would give them all the points. I'd even give them a bonus to their spell save TCs. But you put your soul in the gem, in the receptacle. This leaves your body lifeless. And then you get to try to take control of any nearby bodies. You can detect by focusing a little bit which bodies are stronger or weaker, but which of the stronger bodies and weaker bodies you go to is essentially kind of random. You can focus on going into the stronger bodies, but you're not necessarily guaranteed to get there. Now, to do that, you're going to be trying to force the target soul into the gem and put yours into the new body, which, requires saves there. And if the target succeeds on its save, you cannot do it again for 24 hours. And once you're in the body, if you make it there, you control that body and you can use it to do whatever you want. Say, attack the other people in the room. And this is where the spell starts to get, well, if you haven't already seen a problem, but this is where it obviously begins to have a lot of problems. That new body uses your base attack bonus, your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma modifiers, which that part's good, but it also uses it just basically uses your character's stats. If it has dark vision as just a natural part of its physiology, like dwarves or dark elves, or if it's a troll body, it gets regeneration. You get all of that. But if it's a multi-armed creature or has tails, your character has no experience or ability moving multiple arms and coordination, using a tail to do anything. So those limbs will sit there uselessly. It's not only that, but the strategy described for it is: use this spell, have the rest of the team guard your body, somebody tosses or slips the gem into the room with all the enemy creatures, whatever they might be, and you one by one kill them off. You do things to kill them off. The thing is that by the time you get this spell, you should be going up against some fairly experienced enemies. If they're humanoids, they're going to be, well, not all of them are going to be intelligent, but certainly some of them will be, and even stupid people will get wise to, somebody just chucked a gem in the door and then slammed the door shut. Something odd is going on here. Oh, Jim's going crazy now? Jim didn't start acting crazy till that gem came in here. And here's the other thing. The spell you need to have line of sight or line of effect to the target from the gem. So if somebody throws a pillow or a blanket over there, some DMs might argue that blocks your line of sight or line of effect to the target. Or if they if they're not going to be that particular, if they have a lead or steel box and throw it on there. That's certainly much more durable, thicker, and harder to see through than a blanket or pillow would be, and is also a basis for several other spells not working as effectively. These are not spells like Magic Jar, but that's certainly a ruling or a precedent that a DM could use to say, oh, well, your soul's stuck in the gem now, best of luck. And the other thing is that your soul has to be able to return to your body, so it has to be on the same plane of existence as you. If somebody, say, takes the gem, pockets it, or drops it into, say a bag of holding, the gem is no longer on the same plane of existence as you. It's in its own little pocket dimension. Or if somebody throws it in a Mordenkainen's magical mansion, or anything that takes the gem to another plane of existence, you're screwed. If your soul can't get back to your body, your soul departs for the afterlife. Not only that, but your body is an empty receptacle. If there's anybody or anything out there able to possess targets, whether it's items or people, your body automatically fails that. Meaning, if there's any clever enemies around, which there should be, if there are any enemies around with the ability to toss their souls out there, which there probably will be, that can get turned against you pretty quickly as the rest of your team sees your body waking up and they go, oh, you're done already. Okay, well, things must have gone wrong. And they go, oh, yeah, totally, things went wrong. Hold on, and they start using Charm Person on some of the combat-heavy people, and they do use your own strategy against you and start tearing everything apart. Well, your party may be forced to kill you. Well, kill your body. Which, again, you need a living, healthy body to go into in order to survive. Point being, there's a lot of problems with this spell, and it can be an incredibly useful spell. And yeah, being a DM and trying to be fair and even-handed, if somebody used this strategy that plays with me, I'd let it work a couple of times. Maybe just enough for the players to get comfortable with using the strategy, and then I'd flip the script on them and just change tactics and really purposely screw with them. Now, some of you might be saying, oh, that's not fair though. That's you're using outside knowledge. Well, the thing is that DMs are running the entirety of the world. By this level, like I said, you should be coming up against smarter opponents. Smarter opponents who, while maybe not everybody in their employ is intelligent, they are, or they at least know where to find intelligent people who can strategize, study their opponents, learn the strategies of their opponents. Smart people learn their opponent's strengths and weaknesses. This is how you're going to challenge your players. Players, this is how you're going to be challenged, or at least it should be. So, point being, a good DM will let you use a strategy a couple of times successfully, but then we'll start challenging that, because that's what a smart villain will do. A smart villain with resources at hand will flip the script on you, will attack your strategies. Where you think you're strongest, they're going to exploit weaknesses you might not even be aware of. So, point being, with Magic Jar, that I've belabored for several minutes now, it has a lot of good, interesting uses, but I think it gets overhyped a little bit, because I do think a lot of people are focused on purely mechanical portions of combat without a whole lot of role-playing, and I do think some DMs have, whether by ignorance, frustration, or just not being sure of what to do, or just wanting to keep the table happy, have just kind of allowed some players to get away with this. I'm not saying it isn't a useful spell, I just don't agree with how overhyped it is. But that's just one DM's opinion here. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. I am working away on doing level 6 spells, and I hope to have that spell guide up and ready to go next weekend. And if you enjoyed today's video, please consider giving me a like down there below. Hell, even consider subscribe. You know what? You guys already know this whole spiel. With that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. You guys have yourselves a good night and a great weekend.